Hello, today I'll be talking about this article I reviewed called Strategies to Scaffold Student Learning Applying Vygotsky's Zone of Proximal Development. Learning objectives for today include to develop an understanding of Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, as well as understanding scaffolding techniques utilized in medical education. Vygotsky's social cultural developmental theory includes learning that is considered a developmental process, not that development precedes learning as had previously been thought. Social interactions lead to cognitive development. He believed that students are an active participant utilizing speech, memory, and writing. And it's good to know overall that Vygotsky was considered a constructivist, and that's where we believe that knowledge is constructed from an interplay between the learner and others. His big theory was the zone of proximal development. This is considered the distance within a learning gap. So it's the distance between the student's actual developmental level where independent problem solving occurs and a student's potential developmental level that requires outside guidance. I created this diagram over here to kind of further explain that. The orange area is what the learner can do unaided. The green area is what the learner can do with guidance, and the blue area is what the learner cannot do. The green area here is the zone of proximal development. Within the zone of proximal development, there are 4 stages of learning and transformation. The first stage is performance that is considered other-assisted. That means that a more capable individual, such as a teacher, a peer, or an expert, is assisting the learner. In the second level, the performance is considered self-assisted. This is self-regulated and self-directed learning. The third stage is when performance is automatized, and this is when learning is internalized and consistent with reliable performance in place. Skills at this level are largely unconscious, and this is where most professionals perform. Stage 4 is not a level you want to be at. That's when performance is autonomized, and that is when what is previously learned is no longer automatic, and that typically occurs due to a stress or trauma, and that causes the learner to regress back to earlier stages in the zone of proximal development. The biggest contributor to the zone of proximal development is the educator's role, and that's to support and collaborate. The goal is to utilize assisted performance, which is the activities the teacher performs that helps the student transition from the zone of other assistance to the zone of self-assistance to unassisted internalized learning. The teacher should support and stimulate the student to reach higher levels within the zone, and we utilize scaffolding. Through my journal searches, I found this great diagram, and it shows how initially the student has minimal knowledge and the scaffolder has quite a bit of knowledge, and as you go through time, the student's knowledge grows and the reliance on the scaffolder decreases and fades away. There are 5 categories of assisted performance, and that includes modeling, feedback, instructioning, questioning, and cognitive structuring. Modeling is when a teacher acts as a role model and demonstrates through verbal and nonverbal behaviors. It requires mutual respect. It requires to tailor learning to student needs. It requires preparing students for teachers' interactions, so that way the student does not feel deficient when a teacher engages. And it also, which I find we use in medicine all the time, offers on-the-spot learning for shared knowledge gaps. So when mutual learning can occur when both students and teachers are unaware of answers. In regards to feedback, it helps provide a standard. A standard can include a textbook or a reference of knowledge. They recommend utilizing self-grading assignments, so that way it will increase students' resiliency. They also recommend engaging in thinking aloud, so that way the educator can understand the student's insight. They do recommend no greater silences than 15 seconds as the student's mind may wander. And they also recommend engaging in collaborative events, multidisciplinary. Instructioning is when we recommend using recorded guides and written guides as a reference point for the student. We also encourage the students to make their own learning materials, such as flashcards, note cards, or acquire phone medical apps or pocket textbooks. And the goal is over time to require less of these materials as your knowledge base grows. They also recommend questioning, and there's 2 different types of questioning. One type is to assess the current knowledge base, and the other type is to assess the knowledge deficit and really decide how much learning assistance is still needed. You utilize questions from students and teachers. You utilize all questions types, including open-ended questions, multiple choice questions, closed-ended questions. It is encouraged that students share clinical experiences with the goal for developing metacognition. And it is recommended that you engage with poor performing students early on so that way their incorrect knowledge is not brought into clinical experiences. The hardest category is cognitive structuring, and this is when information is stored into memory and how you recall it for future use. It is very challenging for an educator to teach this. It utilizes concept mapping where students organize information to know what is important and what is not important. When shared with educators, it may help identify knowledge gaps. They also recommend that you individualize students' learning using tutors and one-on-one time as needed. In conclusion, Vygotsky's zone of proximal development is applicable to medical education. It is when you can partner between learner and educator to improve learning. Scaffolding is utilized to optimize learning, and the ultimate goal is for the learner to become automatized and require less scaffolding and structure as they go on in their education. Here's my list of references. I appreciate you guys listening to me, and I hope you all have a great weekend.